The Nazis had spies all over the world, and while the operations in Latin America were arguably more appealing than those in the Middle East and Africa, they were less deadly as well. Today we'll look at Cuba, Mexico, and Brazil and figure out what Abwehr spies were up to in Latin America during the Second World War. In the harbor of Havana, Cuba, a German secret agent managed to, as so often German spies in Latin America did, combine pleasure and work. The German Abwehr had tasked this man with reporting information on enemy shipping movements, and that is what he has done for the past couple of months, without so much as arousing suspicion from anyone. During the Second World War, Cuba was neutral, and it was ruled by the dictator Fulgencio Batista, who first had overthrown General Gerardo Machado in 1933, and in 1952 he once again led a military coup against President Carlos Prioso Caras. Anyway, as for the Abwehr, Cuba was ideal for spying on the United States. The island was only 160 kilometers, approximately 100 miles, away from Florida, and cargo ships of the Allied powers that traveled from Latin America to Britain often anchored at Cuban ports. The intelligence about these ships the Abwehr agents managed to pass to Germany aided German U-boats in sinking these ships on the Atlantic Ocean. The Abwehr agents in Cuba used the name Enrique Luni. His real name was Heinz August Lüning, born in Hamburg and fluent in Spanish. He had joined the Abwehr in 1940 and was tasked with spying on the shipping ports in Cuba, setting up a dress shop as a cover, sending his daily reports on ship movements back to Germany. He even had a radio in case an event took place that required urgent communication. Lüning lived on the easygoing island for 11 months and probably would have managed to sit out the war there if he had not made one crucial mistake, as spies often do. During the Second World War, nearly all mail that was sent towards Europe from Latin America, including Cuba, was sent via the island Bermuda, which was under British control. Now, the Letter Interception Unit of the British Letter Censorship Office housed its largest overseas office on this island, headed by SIS officer Peter Wilson. This office was a large source of information for MI5, which hunted down German agents on the American continent. Our secret agent Lüning, taking precautions and everything, wrote his letters to Germany, but occasionally altered the names that signed them. The problem was that his handwriting didn't change, and the LIU noticed this. Copies of the letters were sent to the FBI in Havana, who traced and arrested Lüning in August 1942. While Nazi sympathizers and anti-American voices in Cuba protested his arrest, it didn't help, and Lüning was executed in November that same year, the only German spy that was executed in Latin America throughout the entire Second World War. That didn't mean, however, that there weren't any other German spies on the continent. Because of the long-troubled relationship between Mexico and the United States, there were Mexicans that understood Germany, now that the country was heading towards a war with the USA, was a good ally to have. However, Mexico had a left-leaning president during the 1930s, President Lázaro Cárdenas, that supported the Republican side during the Spanish Civil War, whereas the Nazi regime supported General Francisco Franco. When in 1940 Manuel Ávila Camacho became president, the Abwehr saw its chance to establish itself in the country and use it as an espionage base to infiltrate the US. It didn't take long for 3 different networks and around 40 agents to establish themselves, supplying Berlin, Hamburg, and Cologne with intelligence on the USA. While the US hadn't declared war with Germany just yet, the Germans understood that the US would ally themselves with Britain, and they ought to keep an eye on the country. Within Mexico, the 2 German spy masters used the codename Max und Moritz, which sounds as if they were a comical duo, but in fact, they were efficient and ruthless Abwehr agents. Max's real name was Georg Nikolaus, who was a banker in Colombia until 1938, and Moritz was Colonel Baron Karl von Schlebrügge, a former Luftwaffe commander that made a living as a representative of a German arms manufacturer before the war. When Nikolaus arrived in Mexico, he set up a spy ring and front companies in order to hide their actual activities. German agents within the USA sent their reports straight to the Abwehr post office in Mexico City, from which they were sent to Germany. Edgar J. Hoover, head of the FBI, stated in 1940 that the best way to control Nazi espionage in the United States was to wipe out the spyness in Latin America. President Roosevelt agreed with him, and the Special Intelligence Service was swiftly created, of which the abbreviation, the SIS, was shared with their British counterpart, as if it wasn't confusing enough already. The new service immediately embarked on an efficient campaign of rooting out the spyness. Schlebrugge was expelled by the Mexicans in April 1941, and the FBI and SIS put Nicolaus under 24-hour surveillance, working together with the Mexican Federal Police. As 1942 came along, the US and Mexico were working together, with encouragement of the British, and the Abwehr's activities in Mexico came to a near halt, as the war on the European continent was turning against Germany as well. Another interesting spy nest, to call it that, was Brazil, where nearly 1 million German immigrants lived before the war broke out. Furthermore, the long coastline provided the ideal setting for the Abwehr to spy on Allied ships, although the German ambassador to Rio de Janeiro, Carl Ritter, met with reluctance and hostility from the Brazilian president, Getulio Vargas. The man that was the spy master of Abwehr agents in Brazil was German naval attaché Captain Hermann Boni. Alfredo was the main agent of the Brazilian Abwehr branch, and Alfred Kempter, a German immigrant businessman, was given the task by Canaris and Dönitz to investigate Recife, particularly the Pan Am airfields and the US South Atlantic Fleet's patrols. This intelligence was crucial for the U-boats being used effectively to sink ships of the Allied powers. Kempter wasn't a patriot, unlike many of his colleagues, and worked for the Abwehr because of the pay. Together with his business partner, Herbert Müller, he set up a front in Rio, the Rapid Information Company. And Müller subsequently joined the Abwehr, providing their superiors with a decent amount of intelligence of shipping, convoys, cargoes, and general US activity. At the end of 1941, over 400 radio messages were transmitted to Germany, and Kempter was awarded the War Service Cross, First Class, for his outstanding work. It wasn't just intelligence Kempter provided his superiors with. He named his network the König network and put it into action, helping the U-boats disturb the British shipping lines. During that year, the British Rodney Star was sunk as she left Buenos Aires, and a Norwegian tanker was sunk as well, both thanks to Kempter's intelligence. The König network was good for over 100,000 tons of Allied shipping sunk per month in 1941, making him invaluable to the Germans. He provided a whole range of intelligence, among which even tide and water conditions, and the quality of the anti-submarine netting. Another effective intelligence agent in Brazil was Albrecht Engels, head of an import firm and an Abwehr agent since the early 30s. He recruited the German harbor master of Rio, Herbert von Heyer, and a similar agent in Recife, where Allied ships bunkered and US planes were refueled. A less effective agent was a Polish man, Józef Starzyński, who wasn't as well paid as the other Abwehr agents due to his Polish background. That wasn't the only thing, though. He was incompetent to such a degree that the Hamburg station could not decipher his poorly written English messages. Considering this, it is rather surprising he was living in a luxurious villa in Copacabana, but then again, most spies lived it up and combined pleasure with work when they reached their destination. When Germany declared war on the US in 1941, Brazil sided with the US and started ejecting German agents. By March 1942, only Kempter and Engels were left. Their colleagues that got caught were arrested and tortured by the Brazilian secret police. Eventually, in August 1942, Brazil was forced by the US to enter the Second World War, although the entire continent did not harbor more than a few pockets of Abwehr agents by that point. There are many more operations that involve spies in the Second World War, but that's a story for another time. Thank you for watching this video, and what is a person or event from the Second World War that you would like to know more about and perhaps see a video of? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to my channel. See you next time.